Yes, it's been around a while, but we had to do something on the new G-Wagon, because somehow Mercedes has updated a car launched in 1979 and created the most desirable SUV of them all. This is the G63, a 585 horsepower lump that costs well over 120 grand and offers less space than a C-Class estate. But just try not letting this thing get under your skin. It really is impossible. The reason it now handles is some big changes to the chassis. There are now double wishbones up front, the rear axle is also more sophisticated, and the steering rack is no longer taken from a tractor. Inside, you really do get all the trimmings of an S-Class, a massive set of screens, and enough configurability, if that's even a word, to keep you and the kids amused for hours. What I love about this car is that underneath all the noise and ostentation lurks a really talented machine. Anyone can make something loud and ridiculous, but the new G63 is actually usable too, if you can afford the fuel bills.
Okay, before we talk about what this thing's like to drive on the track, can we acknowledge that we're even on a track? Because this thing shouldn't be here. I know it's a bit incongruous and I'm being deliberately naughty because it looks so funny on the track. But the last G-Wagon would not be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to talk and drive like this because I'd be off in the scenery with Neil sitting next to me trying to find my teeth, or me trying to find his teeth. His teeth are a bit odd actually, if you looked at them. Anyhow, what's this thing like on a track? It's obviously a complete joke, but it stops and it turns in and it goes round corners. The old one couldn't do that. It really couldn't. This is surprisingly good. On a drying track, I wouldn't want to get the stopwatch out, but it's pretty damn good, you know. The ESP is very, very cautious, so it cuts the thing and means you don't get all the torque that you want. But once you get it up and running, well, there's a cut, then it goes. And then what you do is you just fling it at the apex with as much steering lock as you dare, and then just manage the understeer to the outside of the circuit. There is no oversteer. It's been developed quite clearly to never oversteer. So the outside front tyre is the one that gives up the ghost the first by quite some margin. But you know what? You really can get it round this lap quite quickly at Landau. It must look ridiculous from the outside. It hops over the curbs. The engine is magnificent. The gearbox is pretty good. I mean, it's strolling on at well over 100 up the main straight there. God, they've done the number on this. So, there we go. That was mainly the excuse for me to come to Landau and throw a G-Wagon around. What you really need to know is how good this car is on the road. On the road, this car is little short of a revelation compared to the previous car. I must stop talking about the previous car, but I suppose it's the only context I have. The G-Wagon sort of stands alone. You don't buy a G-Wagon or a Range Rover or a Q7, SQ7, whatever you call them. You just want a G-Wagon, or you don't really, do you? Because you've been taught, a bit like a Defender, that owning a G-Wagon means you put up with its foibles, with all the things that are obviously wrong about it, for the upside, which is the joy of the way it looks and what it stands for, and the fact that you pretend you're a Russian gangster. That's why people buy them, isn't it? So they can burble around pretending they've got a gun on them, when most people in Northern Europe have just got a copy of the newspaper on them. So that's why you want one of these, but now you don't have any of the shortcomings. The only shortcoming you have now is that it costs a lot of money to buy, 150 grand with some toys on it. But, and I really do feel totally ashamed to admit this, it's worth it. There is nothing else like this car. There really isn't. It's so good on road now. The fairly rudimentary suspension system's been uprated, so we now have a, you know, pretty much a unitary body. But it rides in such a lovely manner. It still feels a bit live axle-y, which some people really quite like, because you get that sense of connection and you really feel the axle's working. But every single sharp edge now has a lovely roundness to it. So it sort of hits things, gives you a bit of a wobble, and then it just smooths them all out. It's it's really, really pleasant to be in. You sit high, the throttle response is really good, you just wobble along, and when you want to go quick, it's good. You know, it rolls a bit, but it grips, the steering's not too slow. If you went and drove a last generation BMW X5, this isn't that far off that in handling terms. It really isn't. And that is remarkable. You've got a vertical windscreen, which should mean that you get loads of wind noise, but the wind noise is quite well contained. The driving position is superb, the seat is superb, the quality of the cabin is out of the top drawer. And the whole thing is charming. It just reeks of charm. I like being in this thing. It makes me smile. The fact that I'm sitting inside a very, very expensive box on wheels makes me feel good. Some people respond well to it. Other people think you're the aforementioned Russian gangster, which doesn't always help with local relations, let's say. But I like the way that it flows down the road. I like the way that it rides. I like the way that you can drive it moderately quickly. In other words, the G63 is usable every day as a normal, fast car. That could not be said before.